In this final video for this section, we're going to look at how to organize our code using views. So views is just a term for what you see in the user interface. A view roughly translates to a screen on the website. Instead of using HTML files and serving up static files like we've done before, we had our static path and we just served like index.html or about.html. We're doing almost the exact same thing, except that we want our views to be dynamic and have data bound to them in the way that we did in the previous two examples. We can supply data values and have different things come up. So let's take a look at our application. The first thing we need to do is set the view engine to whatever view engine we're using. In this case, we are using EJS. You might be using others like Pug or Mustache or something like that, but we want to continue to use EJS, so we call app.set. Then we need to tell it where to find our views. This is much like when we were serving up static content and we had to tell it where the images and CSS were. So we're going to set app.set and say, look for things in the views folder. Over here on the actual site structure, all we're saying is, when I say this route is for my root, I want you to serve the file that is located in views index. So we're setting the path that contains all of our files in it, and it's just going to match on file name without the .ejs. So the EJS is the file extension because we're using embedded JavaScript in this case. Let's just go ahead and run through our first example here. So we're going to create this Birds of Indiana website. We have this route for the root here, and we see that it's pointing to index, and we see that it has one variable that we're passing to it called isMember. If I pop open index, we can find that isMember right here. And we see that we're using that variable to control whether we see a message that says, yes, you are a member, so we're going to say, thanks for your continued support to the Birds of Indiana Club, or no, you're not a member. So here's our else block. If you're not a member, if isMember is false, we'll say, consider joining, excuse me, consider joining the Birds of Indiana Club, and so forth here. Let's give it a run. I'll put a breakpoint here. Okay, and I've already run it, but I'm going to run it. We'll do like we did before. So we have this member. Let's set it to true. Okay, we pulled member off the query string. We're going to pass it to the EJS view. It's going to look up index.ejs in our views folder. And we can't step into this code and see how it's worked, but this call is going to automatically run the logic here that says, okay, well, in this case, isMember is true. So we will see this text. Thanks for your continued support. Let's try it again. We'll just get rid of this whole query string. Member is undefined in this case. This whole expression evaluates to false. So isMember is false. And we will instead see, consider joining Birds of Indiana Club. We have another route on this website, and that is for bird. So we just looked at the root one. For this website, we have 3 birds that we want to post, and it's like a gallery or a portfolio style website, I guess. So we can put cardinal, we can put mourning dove, or we can put red-winged blackbird. So let's try mourning dove up here. And it will look up this route parameter for mourning dove. Really, I probably should have done mourning dash dove. That's the more common way of doing URLs. They don't tend to use camel case, but since I already wrote it this way, I'm going to leave it this way. FYI, if you're defining it, I would probably go back and rewrite it if I were doing it and do mourning dash dove. Okay, and we have misspelled mourning dove here, but let's see how we got there. Put a breakpoint. Instead of using query strings to control the route in this page, we're going to use parameters, route parameters. So query strings are more appropriate when you're sort of like filtering or showing which page you're on or something to do with that kind of logic. Route parameters are, I want to make it look like I'm on a completely different page. Even though we'll see that we only have one bird page, we want it to appear as if there are different bird pages. So whenever you're getting something by ID and maybe you have like a user page for user 1, user 2, user 3, you'll typically see that using route parameters rather than query string parameters. So our params object has one property. That property is the bird ID. That ID is just a lookup to this bird's object that we have here. So there are 3 IDs, 3 keys that we might pick, and each of those has an object itself as the value. So we're allowed to nest objects within objects. If we were to say birds dot cardinal dot common name, we would get northern cardinal. If we were to say birds dot mourning dove dot scientific name, we would see this. I'm not even going to try to say it. So in this case, we're just going to go ahead and pull off the bird that we want by its key. We don't know what that is ahead of time, so we use this square bracket operator to index into birds and say get the bird with the property name mourning dove. So now we have our mourning dove information, and we're just going to pass that whole bird object into here. We could have split it apart further and passed in common name, image, scientific name by themselves, but it makes more sense to just pass the whole object because we're going to need all of those anyway. And then within the bird.ejs view, which is in our views folder, we can use the properties using the syntax that we've seen already, this %= syntax. So we'll see the bird name in the title of the page, which this is a typo here. I actually need to fix this. This should be common name. I fixed it. So we'll fix this in a moment. The title won't work. We'll see the common name in the header, the scientific name under that, and an image on the page. Okay, so my title's broken. Let's fix that. But let's look at our page source. This came from the property right here. And we had our scientific name that was stubbed in right here. And we had our image URL was passed in here. So we can drop in those values wherever we want. They don't have to be right inside of the tags. We can have them as attributes on the HTML element themselves, like an image path, which is what we're doing in order to get the images for our birds page. I'm going to do one last fix here. Let's just change this to common name. So unfortunately, this doesn't give an error right away when you try to run it, telling you something's wrong. So you would just have to check it, or you would have to check your browser console. If I hit F12 and look at my console, I probably have errors in here. I'm not going to go digging at the moment, but we would have errors that come up here when we display the page saying it can't find that property. So let's run it. I fixed it at this point, and our title now says Mourning Dove. Give it a excuse me. All right, guys, should have cut it right there. Give it a try yourself. Go ahead and try to tackle this challenge. Add a new property to each bird object for color. In the birds.ejs view, you can find the colors if you want. This is the actual website where I got those pictures. So add a new color property here for your birds and try to use it in the bird.ejs. Maybe add a new paragraph for color